Hola, chaps. Mr. Turek here. In this first episode that I'm creating for you, I have some preliminary stuff that I just feel like I want to express to you. So, first, kind of an explanation as to why we're all at home right now. Secondly, some statistics calculations regarding our own local school and environment. You'll need a calculator for that. Some advice from a Rutgers University professor who was actually a guest speaker at our school last year. A comment or two about gracious professionalism, something I've learned from our robotics club, and some upbeat encouragement for you to get you to think of this as you're on a journey transitioning to a whole new world ahead of you. So, first section is why are we home right now? As if you haven't heard. So, I had posted a link to this article that I saw in the New York Times on Friday the 13th, our last day of being in school. I actually read this article while you were taking your Friday quiz. And yes, I know I still need to finish grading and returning to you your Friday quiz. But by now, you must have taken a look at this article out of curiosity. So it shows the estimates carrying out the scientific method of how many people in the United States might become infected by COVID. That's the red line, peaking at around 9.4 million people in July of this year, and the total number of US citizens who may die as a result of COVID 19. As you can see, the estimate is somewhere around a million people. Now, these are just estimates based on what we understood about COVID 19 and how well it spreads and what population it affects as of the time that the article was written back in March 13th, a little over a week ago now. And the point is, it's pretty dire for what we've experienced in the past. A million people dying in the United States alone is pretty dramatic. Now, this yellow vertical line that was just added to the image shows what would happen if we do interventions starting early. And the effect is it drops down how many people total are infected and how many people total die. So, this is something worth studying. This shows the effect of waiting 1 month before starting anything. So here it was starting in, let's say, May or so, and then waiting, well, I should say, starting in June, perhaps, and then waiting till July. There is an improvement by starting earlier, and uh, things get worse by waiting till later. So you can drag this intervention bar yourself and see, well, let's not start doing anything until July or August. As you can see, it's kind of terrible on what effect that has. There's still 9 million people who get infected. Hard to read on this overlay, but there's still approaching a million people who end up dying from that. And of course, if you wait till next year, it's way too late to have any significant effect. So waiting until a peak is not as helpful as waiting not at all and starting as soon as humanly possible. Also, there's three levels that they have on this model. One of them is what if you are just modeling it with what we were doing up through March 13th, which was basically encouraging people to think about staying home, try to work from home, try to limit some large gatherings of people. That wasn't very much, and not doing anything to address what would be critical supplies shortages, getting protective equipment for people. That's the mild situation. And we're still in that situation right now as far as the supply chain goes for some medical logistic support. If we had our act together a little bit better, I'm sorry, so this was mild, not very effective. I mean, and of course, waiting till October does nothing meaningful. With modest measures, you can see that starting around March 13th, if we could do this, if we could encourage a lot of people to stay at home, if we could work on getting supplies to the hospitals reasonably well, that's a big improvement. Now, watch what happens when we go aggressive. Flattens the curve, as they say. So now, starting today, or March 13th, I should say. If we wait till July, the effect is not as good. The higher that red line, the more people are infected. The more people are infected, the more people die. So if you take a look zooming in here, this is also the curve that the CDC likes to put out a lot. It says we're trying to flatten the curve. So the blue line is how many intensive care unit cases there could be at the peak, 3 to 66,000. If you zoom out a little bit and study this, you see we only have 95,000 intensive care unit beds in the United States. That's the dashed line. So what you can see is that if a lot of people become infected, a lot of people are going to be hurting for beds that are not available. If you scroll a little bit more in this article, it shows up what happens if we can delay when it peaks until, let's say, October, November. And yes, these are the dates for peaking. It's not related to the school year, it's related to the science of the estimates of when this would spread and reach its worst point. So even waiting till November before the peak comes along, there's still far more people who would be in need of intensive care than there are beds available. But at least it won't be quite as bad as if we do nothing. So the point of this article is this: we're staying home to try to save lives. In this next segment, I suggest that you pull out a calculator. I suppose the question is, how concerned should you be? I'm not trying to be particularly grim here, but I thought you should have a dose of realism about what kind of estimates we have for our particular population. So this graph is subject to change a little bit. It shows what the mortality rate is by age as of a week or two ago, I think is when this graph came out. It has been changing over time. So if you're curious, you should get a more up-to-date graph to do the calculation. But what it shows is age on the bottom and the mortality rate on the y-axis. For the purpose of doing the estimate, let's say that there's 2,300 students here at our local school, and that none of you are more than 19 years old. So down there on the bottom, the bin that you fit into is the 10 to 19-year-old category. With your calculator, you can estimate statistically how many students at our school might die. Again, this is if we're not aggressive, if we don't do a bunch of things, if. So based just on this graph and doing it as a math exercise, what does it say? It says take the 2,300 students at our school, multiply that by the mortality rate, and I remind you that it's a percentage. So that means in decimal form, you move the decimal point 2 places to the left before you put it into your calculator. So you would type in 0.002, enter. And what's displayed on your calculator is the estimate of approximately how many students could die as a result of COVID-19 here at our local school. I'm giving you a moment to actually pull your calculator out and figure it out for yourself. Secondly, we can do an estimate about the teachers at our school. So I would call it 120 teachers, and I would break them up into a younger group. Let's say half of them, 60 teachers, are in the age bracket of 30 to 39 years old. They're young, they're starting families, they're teaching, and the other half, oldsters like me, would be, let's say, in the 40 to 49-year-old bracket as an average for the teachers at our school. I'm actually several bars farther off to the right than that. As I reminded you once, when I was your age, the universe was only 8 billion years old, and now it's 13.7 billion years old. So I'm a few bars farther off to the right. The way to do this calculation is we would say, let's do 60 teachers in the lower age bracket, so that would be 0.002. And that's how many teachers might die according to the probability chart here. And then we do the same thing for the other teachers who are in a slightly larger, well, risk category is going to be twice as great. So when you add those together, you get a result that shows how many teachers would be expected to die. And we're a much smaller population than these students. Even though the risk is greater per person, the population size is much smaller. I wanted to also toss out there about your parents. So let's say that every student at Cerritos High School has 2 parents, and that means 4,600 parents, and that they're in the somewhat older age bracket as well. I would suggest, as an average, maybe the 40 to 49 age bracket. So into your calculator, you should type in 4,600, that's the number of parents we're estimating, times the mortality rate, which here for the 40 to 49 years old is 0.4%. Again, 0.004 is what you type into a calculator. Don't kill me, please. The number on your display is an estimate of the number of parents out of our particular school, not our district, not our state, not our county, just the number of parents out of our particular school who might die as a result of COVID-19. And the last calculation I would like you to do is let's talk about your grandparents. So on average, let's say that every student attending Cerritos High School has at least one living grandparent at this time. That would make it 2,300 grandparents. Now, they might already be in a much older age bracket, but let's say that on average, your grandparents are 60 to 69 years old. So into your calculator, the number of grandparents times the mortality rate for the age group of 60 to 69-year-old. And you can't have a fraction of a grandparent die. So you should round this off to the nearest whole integer, and that will be your estimate. My results are potentially 5 students could pass away. It's unlikely that any teachers would pass away. I have a probability of less than 0.5. So rounding down, teachers probably will come through this okay unless they're old geezers like me. For parents, my result is 18. And for grandparents, 83. Next, I want to share with you advice that I got in an email attached from Professor John McGann. So, you know how there's a lot of misinformation and fake news out there where someone forwards something and forwards it to someone else and you have no idea where it came from. Well, what I want to share with you is that I know Professor John McGann, and I can vouch as Philip A. Turek, teacher, that John McGann is the author of the email that the attachment to the email that I'm about to share with you. So it's not something that was made up by some foreign government and then planted here as something to just mess with our minds. This is something that I can vouch for. So his article here is about what advice to do. And he's a family man, and his friends and family asked him to write this email, so he composed it and published it on Saturday, March 14th, the day after our school shut down. So the first thing he suggests is to buy a pulse oximeter. Well, here's one. It came in the mail, and The one I got is yellow as opposed to the blue one that he has. And to use it, it's pretty simple. So its function is to measure how much oxygen is in your body. And this one also measures what your pulse rate is. It's upside down so that the person reading it is not the person whose finger is in there. And what else to tell you about it is pretty easy to use. For those of us who are studying waves and optics and light, it uses two different wavelengths to assess the reflectivity and transmissivity of your skin, and from that deduced the two readings. So you clip it onto your finger like they do in a hospital. There's a little button to press at the top, and then you wait for it. If you're alive, you'll see that bar graph going up and down for a while. Apparently, I am human, despite your thinking. And it says my oxygen level is at 99%, and my heart rate is currently around 81 to 82 beats per minute, because it's always exciting to talk to you students. So it's worth getting. And no, I'm not making money off the product. I'm just trying to share with you what Professor McGann has been sharing with us, and advice about what to do with these readings. So you as students should be establishing a baseline of data for every member in your household. Particularly the older the person, the more important it is to have a record. What is their pulse rate? What is their normal oxygen level? Is it 99%, like we just saw with me? Is it only 93%? Is that what's normal for them? So that if things start getting worse, you've got a record to share with the hospital that says, here's what their baseline is, here's what's going on now, and some comments about what's considered to be highly alarming. Buy some rehydration salts. Stay home. Well, now it's a statewide national declaration that we stay home. And not only our state, but other states as well are now uh, implementing this. And if you're one of the people who have to go out because you're a healthcare provider or truck driver, we thank you and we try to support you by keeping out of your way. This virus can linger for a while. I've heard up to a few days on the news accounts on certain types of surfaces. And if you just take a disinfectant and wipe it down, that's not really good enough. I mean, you could do better, is the point of this. So, what you could do, let's see, where did he talk about it? I guess later. What you could do is learn to disinfect things. So, let me pause here for a moment in case anyone wanted to look at this uh, screen for those of you who don't have the file to just download and read. As far as disinfecting goes, this virus might be lingering for up to 10 minutes after you put a disinfectant on it. So you don't just spray it on and then immediately wipe it off. You give it a chance to kill the virus. And here's some suggestions about it. Let it sit for 5 minutes. Make your home your personal spaceship. That's the theme I'm going to be using with you students. And the idea is, in a spaceship, you don't really just get to go out and interact with anyone on the outside. You have to wear a space suit when you go out. Now, treat your home as a secure place that you can relax and be comfortable in there. Keep records for your family. I should almost make this an assignment for you students to do. You might not get this thing, but you might have a thermometer at home. You might have something. You could at least practice measuring how many breaths a person breathes per minute when they're resting, same time of day. And if you want, you could use Galileo's trick of measuring your pulse with your fingers here if you don't have a device that can measure heart rate. I don't have anything that I'm using for measuring blood pressure, but there you go. All right, so some of us have the flu, and some of us have something that's not the flu. And so he listed here some distinctions you might notice between one and the other, and you should not panic if you have the symptoms of the flu. After all, it is flu season and it's going around. And this year I did not get a flu shot myself, so I could be going through all these experiences too. If you have a fever, stuff like the generic form of Tylenol, the generic form of ibuprofen, those things can help. Don't smoke, don't vape. I know some of my students have been doing that and it's just never set well with me. Please stop. Now's a great time to say, oh, I don't want to run off to the dealer because he's killing me. Of course, if you're vaping, you're sort of killing yourself in the first place. Comment about masks. They're not really effective for the air, but it's something. It's really recommended you just avoid people. This business of social distance is starting to finally take root here. There are now pieces of tape on the floor in places like Panda Express and in Costco, and they're 6 feet apart. The idea that you stand on that spot, the next customer waiting to check out stands on the next spot up. And people like at Trader Joe's are trying to spread out the customers from bunching up into a line waiting to go into the store. They've set a limit at our local one that says no more than 50 customers in the store at a time. The rest of you wait outside. One person comes out, next person goes in. Meanwhile, keep your distance from each other. Inside the store, it's quiet and quick. An alternative to toilet paper that worked very successfully in Biosphere 2, by the way, and it's something that you could consider given how tight the supply is at the moment for toilet paper. So, thinking ahead, what if you have to take a parent or family member to the hospital? There's a good chance you're not going to be able to communicate with them for a long time. So have sort of a go bag ready to go that says, here's the important information about that person. Here's stuff that will keep them happy and content for a while. As if you hadn't figured it out already, Cerritos High School is not likely shutting down for just 2 weeks. This is a much longer term event than that. And would think that by now most of us have come to realize that. He talked about flattening the curve. I talked about that already. If you have a compromised health system to start off with, it's just going to get worse. This is a good time for you to work on making yourself healthy. Not only make your home safe to be in, but make yourself stronger and healthier. You're not going to gym class right now with other people. You can do virtual workouts with your classmates. You can do stuff around the house. A home is a great way to get you into shape if you let it. You should be not indulging in junk food so much anymore because you're not going out and getting distracted into doing it. So use this chance to improve your personal health. Particularly you students, you're the ones who are going to be taking up the baton when this is all done. The boomer removers, how Ms. Replar referred to this. So the older generation, and by the way, I'm a baby boomer, the older generation is getting culled by this virus, and you students are the ones who need to step into our shoes and start governing the nation much better than we've been doing. There's clearly room for improvement compared to what our generation is leaving you. So we don't know. I've seen some predictions already that says this virus is going to come back again next winter or so. And so by then, maybe the population will have changed. Maybe we will have a vaccine that's starting to come online at that point. It does take time to do that. Here are some links. If you don't know who WHO is, well, boo-hoo for you WHO, because WHO is the World Health Organization. And here's the last of his links. All right, so there's a lot you can be doing at home. There's a whole routine that you should be doing, and I think my next video after this one is going to try to suggest daily routines that you should be doing. I know I have daily routines of trying to teach you, and I'm a little deficient on that at the moment, but here's this first video finally up and running. I can show you that symbolically I have an item on the shelf here that relates to my chemistry course. I have an item on the shelf that relates to my CP physics course. I have an item on my shelf that relates to my honors aerospace engineering course. So that's what the stuff is in the background. Just over a week ago, when it was unofficially announced that the school was shutting down for at least 2 weeks, your initial reaction was to celebrate, as if, wow, we're getting out of school, sort of like getting out of jail. By now, most of you have had a change of heart about that, mostly being filled with worry and stress and concern about your grades, about finishing the academic year, about how this affects your college applications, and so forth. So, this is what we would refer to as trial by fire. You are being put into a situation that we didn't expect you to get into as the school year began. And everyone knows that you're in this situation now and that you are put into a situation of stress. Over my 27 years of teaching, I've worked with plenty of students who've been put into stressful situations, some of the more fun ones being my space ed teams. And I'm aware that you are capable of doing much more than you think you are capable of doing, particularly in terms of handling this in a mature way. Think of it this way: in 1 or 2 or 3 years from now, you were to be going off to college to learn how to independently study on your own away from home. Well, now you are being called upon to learn how to study independently on your own while you are still home. You don't have the advantage of coming into the classroom and interacting directly with your classmates and directly with me, but in college, you often are expected to stand on your own 2 feet, and certainly after college. So look at this experience as a preview of what you could be like 1 or 2 or 3 years in the future. And I think you'll discover that you have far more strength and resilience than you thought you had a couple of weeks ago, if you thought about it at all. Now, I want to share with you also an assignment I put on our Google Classroom. It was dated for March 18th, and it said there's going to be an alignment of the planets and the moon, and you should go outside and look at it. And I made the time set for 5:45 for you to complete this assignment, which was listed as ungraded. So here's one of the comments that a student made. Mr. Turek, this is unbelievable. Why is this assignment due at 5:45 a.m.? This means that we have to wake up earlier than that, and teenagers need a good night's sleep for at least 8 to 10 hours. If you could change the time this assignment is due, it would be greatly appreciated. Now, we're currently in a culture where a lot of people engage in trolling, which means someone puts out a message and then a bunch of people jump on them and say, oh, that's politically incorrect and you shouldn't do that and shame on you. In the old days, we would say this is a mob, a crowd carrying torches and pitchforks. So if you want to watch an old black and white movie like Frankenstein or something, you'll see an example of that. Today, it's trolling. So I interpreted this as a humorous message from a very dear student who is very expressive and energetic, engaging. So I think I want to share with you this. So I can't change the timing of astronomical events. I can choose to share them with you, which is what I did. And I myself went outside and tried to observe this event. So here's a picture I took at 5:45 in the morning on March 18th, 2020 from my backyard. And as you can see, the marine layer had come in where I live and I couldn't see any of the view. So I went to the front yard and I took this picture. And so you can see, you can still take pretty pictures even on an overcast morning. Uh, this is what you can do. You should be playing with cameras and equipment, a lot of stuff at your home. It was not intended as something where I'm going to grade it and you're going to be quizzed on it, and this is a required assignment. I didn't realize until Ms. Revelar pointed it out to me days later that I have the option on Google Classroom of choosing to click on where it says share something with your class. And that's how I should have presented this. Meanwhile, I did share with you the website previously called Astronomy Picture of the Day. Their astronomy picture of the day for March 18th is this picture taken from, I believe, Montreal. And there's the view in the sky of the moon and planets. Here's a little trick you can do. My students taught me this during the Inspire program. If you want to have like a ghost image of yourself, you could do that trick. But the point is, most people recognize that this is a fun, enjoyable uh, sight to behold if the weather is clear. And there is a second comment that I had gotten from another student. I've never seen the sky this beautiful. Thank you so much for telling me about the amazing view today. I interpret both of these as being positive messages from my students who are trying to socially interact with me. So I find the first one humorous and the second one adorable. I'll use that term. And you should work towards gracious professionalism. Now, that's a term that comes out of my robotics club. They're part of the First Tech Challenge. And if you Google FTC gracious professionalism, you'll get the scoop on what it means. But as far as you and I are concerned, this means we're trying to give our peers the benefit of the doubt. Of the doubt. It's very hard to interpret the emotional content of typed words. So I could interpret a message one way. I've always been extremely sarcastic in class. If you were to just take what I say and read it as typed words, it would sound pretty awful most of the time. So keep in mind that I've trained my students to sound awful in terms of the words they write when really they're being humorous and playful. So stop trolling. I told you that you could view the situation as a preview of what you will be like as a college student 1, 2, or 3 years from now. But with a little bit of imagination, you could also look at the situation and imagine that each household that you're in as being its own independent spaceship. And so on the left, an image of Buck Rogers spaceships that I took from Pinterest. And we can think of ourselves as being a fleet of independent sealed spaceships off en route, hopefully to the same new destination, but not necessarily for all of us. In the middle is a drawing that you can use as self-image of you as a space cadet. Over here on the right, I'll move my image out of the way, is a photograph of me. Yeah, that was me, taken in Thanksgiving of 2002 when I spent 2 weeks on a simulated Mars base near Hanksville, Utah, as part of the Mars Desert Research Station. So that brings us to the part that you most want to learn about, and that is the extra credit opportunity. Turns out the Mars Society has a Mars City State Design Contest going on. And you could go to their website and look up the announcement about it. This is a competition to design a city state on the city of Mars for 1 million people. Of course, first prize is $10,000. Now, this isn't open to just university students. It's open to people around the planet. You can form into a team if you electronically submit your 20-page proposal for this city state and include me as a copy of it. Then the authors, the genuine people who research and write this submission, you people will get extra credit, a fabulous prize of extra credit. Maybe 5,000 millipoints, maybe even 10,000 millipoints of extra credit. So, and by the way, we do have some history. So when we did space settlement competitions, occasionally we got first place. Now that the Mars Society is doing annual competitions, I've had students go and compete against university teams. The last time we competed and we made it to the finals, we actually won the $2,000 prize that they had back then for the place that we had. So this can be done, and it's certainly a reason for you to consider learning about this stuff. So now let me go and just close out with the last slide, my author's message. We have left our old world behind. Now, design a better one, and let's prepare ourselves for it.